Hey everybody, I'm Yao Ming. This is Angelina, and let's get straight down to the burning questions. What exactly does AVOXTATE do?
So, hi everyone, I'm the founder of AVOXTATE. My name is Angelina, and AVOXTATE is a transmedia production studio. And through storytelling, we do creative advocacy on mental health, and such that these youths who are struggling to get the help that they need, at least be able to cultivate that sense of agency through the brave space in our community.
So tell me more about yourself. Why did you decide to start AVOXTATE?
So it's quite funny because as a kid, I've always been exposed to entrepreneurship because my family does own a business. But then as I kind of grew to, I guess, the past, 19 ish years, I kind of found my niche, which is in creative work and in social impact. So I decided to kind of see if there's a way to merge all of those to be able to do something that I like. So I found that. And I do express that through a Vox state because a Vox state does do creative work, and we do work basically creative advocacy, which is social impact.
Could you elaborate more about what kind of business does your family do and why did you not decide to continue on it?
I think my family is in the beauty tech space. So it's not that I'm not interested in beauty or tech. It's more of it's not for me. For me, I think I differ a lot in terms of values compared to my family, and I prioritize the people more. Not that they don't, but more of the people and human rights and so on. So I decided to go towards that route and doing something I like and having the ownership instead of continuing a legacy that I may not resonate with is better for me.
So what challenges do you think you face mentally nowadays?
That's a very odd question. Hold on. I think as an entrepreneur doing social work, so social entrepreneurship, there is very fine line between work and personal life now, because when I go to work, I think about mental health and then think about the research and so on, and then I go back to myself and have to care my own mental health, which then goes back. So it's a very fine line between work and personal life. And I mean, for me, I do go through periods of a lot of anxiety, and my emotions are quite high and low, which is not super ideal as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur you're expected to be level-headed and so on. So those are the kind of the things that I have to sort of deal with, especially doing my specific startup. Yeah.
So let's say I were to start a startup today and I need to find a team, right? Do you think a co-founder is very important in a startup? Or do you think one person can do it themselves?
I think it depends on the nature of your startup, especially if you're going for a product or a service that requires more hands and then is an industry that requires a lot of efficiency, then definitely more hands on deck is better. But I think it also depends on you. If you yourself are able to manage and if you have the skill sets to run your startup, because sometimes you want to do a startup in a field that you're not super well versed in, or you just don't have the skills to do every single part of it, then you might need someone else. But then at the same time, you need to see if that person, like the skill set you need, whether they deserve to be a co-founder or employee. The only difference I feel between the two of them is the ownership that they have. In terms of that, the co-founder, they are expected to care about the development and they care about the future, and they start caring about all of those. Whereas an employee may or may not, you kind of delegate work to them, and a co-founder, they create their own tasks such that both of you are able to proceed. So it depends on the work dynamic that you're looking for and whether you are able to handle someone else, because to have a co-founder is also a working relationship. So you're building relationship and rapport as you kind of build your product or service. So it's really dependent on your startup. For me, is that if let's say as a production studio, I am looking for someone like to animate, then I would have to consider, is this person, do I need to delegate ownership or equity to this particular person such that they can run that whole animation side, or do I just pay them to be like a manager, so managing even more people, but I still able to have a sense of everyone. So there's different things to consider as well. Yeah.
So while doing AVOXTATE, what's your biggest setback you have faced?
Funny enough, on that same topic, I guess it's for me it's people management. Um, I think I have experience in project management from school and all, but people management is something that I've always struggled with, because as someone who's, I guess, quite different from the people around me. People has always been something that I'm afraid to do. So communication or trying to understand people. So doing a startup and then having more and more people come on board, trying to manage them and their expectations, deadlines, and cater to their needs is something that I had to actively care for. And then as someone who's also afraid of initially at least talking to people. So I'm okay having a conversation with you like this, but in a group setting, in a stage fright, oh my god, I would like cry. And that has happened a lot of times. However, as like CEO and having to care about development, I unfortunately I have to push myself to go for those pitches, go for those networking sessions, and then overcome that fear. And that fear keeps pushing me back and forth. So on top of that is I think I put a lot of heart to the people I choose, but that also comes with the fact that I see them also as a layer of as like friends. And what does that mean? It means that whenever I want to address a problem, then I'll be like, I don't want to ruin our friendship. And the biggest problem about that is that, unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, you need to learn how to get people on board, but at the same time, sack people as fast as possible if they're not working for you. And that is, for me, that is the emotional barrier and the like connection barrier as someone who already struggles with that. Yeah.
You and I are lucky to be part of an amazing team of startups here in Singapore Poly. What do you think, or what kind of traits have you seen in startup founders that you think are like keys to success?
I think if you were to have a team, then one is the vision, right? Because we are, yeah, you're right. We are in a really good community of startups, and it's a very diversified group of startups in Singapore Poly. Like there's from those in tech, sustainability, and then there's sites in social entrepreneurship in different creative fields, and then there's those that are just pure creative, and then there's also all of you at Videoto, which is in a tech site, right? So it's everyone is doing very different things, but I guess what kind of brings us together is the shared struggle. So it's like the empathy that all of us kind of have for our users. So because I think what differs an entrepreneur from a business owner, or like those that just start a small business in terms of like those coffee shops that you have a lot of competitors in, an entrepreneur solves problems, and those problems require you to have a lot of empathy. And sure, it may not be as such like big world issue like mental health, but that doesn't mean that you're not solving something that your users go through. So if it's just simple inconveniences and you're trying to make an impact to their life, that's the difference. And you see that in as a big trait in every single one of the startups here in SP, and the people that we meet, at least those are successful, right? So I think that's one thing that any entrepreneur should have, right? Is empathy, because you're here to solve the world, not solve the world's problems, but solve problems such that people have a better time living on this wretched earth already. So, it's something that's, yeah, very important. Yeah, just why did you start Videoto then? Like for me, I started AVOXTATE because I personally I felt the problem, which is the excess of mental health services and support in Singapore, and I see the people around me also go through that problem, and then I see how systemic and cultural influences have contributed to that problem, and advocacy work is there through all your SAMH, IMH, and also organizations. But then they always target like the massive uh, spectrum, all age groups. Then who cares about the youths? Because currently all their messaging is like, oh, it's okay to get help. But then what happens if I get help and then I go back? So it's that, and that's why I started a Vox State. And to feel for them was a lot of empathy. And there were times where it feels very hopeless when you think about an issue and then you feel so much pain for your users. But then, what about you then? Like, why did you start Videoto? What do you see?
Honestly, it's really come down to like for us, we're not as um social or more we're not so much of a social enterprise. And a lot of the things that led to the formation of Videoto was like just pure struggles in, let's say for us, our case was e-commerce live streaming. And we did like so many e-commerce live streams, but we just simply couldn't have the time to edit the videos. Or in fact, even like let's say this podcast, without video though, we wouldn't be able to edit videos at such a high speed.
Was the problem that you kind of saw in your users the inconvenience, especially in the e-commerce world? Because I mean, for myself, I'm not in the e-commerce world. Obviously, I buy, but I'm not inside selling, right? So, is the problem like the marketing side of it?
I think the thing is not just automation alone, because honestly, I mean, anyone can create an AI, anyone can create like in especially in these days, every startup's an AI startup at this point. So we're not trying to just build an AI here. I mean, we're trying to really improve the lives of designers, you know. How much of the time do you spend video editing, right? That you add in your own flavors into a video, and how much of it is something that's repetitive and can be done. So the thing we're really trying to solve at Video Tool here is to remove the repetitive part, such that video editors can really put, instead of like 1% of their time into the creative work, maybe they can spend 95% of their time on the creative work and we can just do the rest for them. So it's really like a design sense that we want to come from.
I mean, like, I think between the two of our startups is a very interesting dynamic. Of course, um, like if you were to start comparing, it's just that maybe mine is more social impact than yours, but it doesn't mean that yours doesn't have impact. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. And it's very interesting because technically we are both in the creative side of things. We're trying to create products within the creative industry in some way. You're trying to benefit the creative industry. I'm just inside. So like a question that I had as you kind of talked about how video to is like, are you, because in the creative space right now there is a lot of conflict with discussion on the use of AI on creative work. So how does that work for us? Because I mean, as for AVOXTATE, we're a transmedia production studio. So eventually we'll probably start making videos, and whether it is through animation or actual video, then how do you come in, right? If I were to use a video to for AVOXTATE. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna address the very key burning question here, which is AI in design, right? Everybody hates Gen AI in design. Like currently, there's like OpenAI Sora, Google Gemini's Veo or something, and all of them really changed the design landscape as a whole. But in my view of it, we can't just everyone's trying to build an AI that can do everything at once. It's definitely a flawed philosophy. I think I had that at one point of time. And it's really something that you will move on against, right? The more you get in touch with your design side. I think a lot of tech companies nowadays, they focus on purely on the tech side, technological side. They do not care the output, the design.
Right, like generative AI in the creative space is not fun because the whole point of a creative space is to be able to express yourself and the creative liberties that as a creative myself we want to explore and we want to be able to express that. And creativity goes through individuality. So like I suppose for you you're like assistive, you don't kind of go over creative liberties or creative expression, you kind of just assist. And it's like I think that's how AI should be, right? You're kind of replacing the things that I don't need. I need so much brain power for, but like they do little impact. I have to keep doing the same thing over and over again, right?
Actually, I heard this from one of my media art friends, which is art is not for the viewers, it's for the artists to express themselves. So when you do like AI art, there doesn't seem to be any form of like soul spirit put into this. Like when you look at, okay, this might be an extreme example, but if you look at Michelangelo's David or like those sculptures, you know, of the antiquity and stuff, you can really feel the grandeur of what they were trying to express. But if you just like type in a prompt into like let's say OpenAI, right, and say, oh, draw me a statue, it's just there, you know. Art usually comes with a story behind it. And that's what we're trying to preserve at Videoto. That's what we're trying to emphasize as well. As I said, right, we don't want to superimpose ourselves on creative liberties because we want artists to do what they can do, right? Or else they won't be artists in the first place. They'll just be like technicians or something. What we do is to really just remove all the things that you guys don't want to do. And we strive to build like the best possible tool for you guys to like express your creativity and go further with what you have. And I mean, a lot of people have been saying, what if AI replaced humans? And you can kind of relate this to like the industrial revolution, right? The steam engine and all that stuff. It could replace, that guy working at the plant or something, but it will be able to create new jobs for people that are doing even bigger things. It gives people more time. Like the rise of like the steam engines and stuff, right? They made agriculture so efficient that there suddenly is like a golden age where people can work on art, work on science. And I don't want to say so early that we want to like usher in a new golden age or something, but it's definitely a vision in mind,
It's a vision, yeah,
It's a vision in
100%.
mind.
Yeah. As a social entrepreneur, I mean, I would have to do networking and then I have to get in touch with all the social organizations out there and any organization really. But you kind of see that now because generative AI in terms of the creative space is so much more prevalent, then you kind of see like even the government organizations doing it, right? And then especially all the avatars, and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that because like I guess in a startup space, you're going for like a lean startup model because like as little people as possible, but you still able to produce a lot. And that's why Gen AI is so prevalent. But then I do think that like these organizations who kind of just use AI for the efficiency of it, you kind of lose your human touch. And that's why I guess I went towards this transmedia kind of thing. Because deep down, I think one of the visions internally for AVOXTATE is to be able to have creatives have the freedom of expression, or at least not have their creative liberties in that. Because to solve a human problem is to have the human touch. And so you need to have human interaction and human input, and therefore like maybe organizations you should hire designers, maybe they know better than your gen AI does. Yeah.
What would a 10-year-old Angelina say to you today, or what would you say to her?
I think 10-year Angelina is going through a mental health crisis by then. So I think one is to see myself almost 20 alive. I think 10-year Angelina would be very one is shocked, but I think the bigger value is also seeing that um being in a mental health crisis and then seeing 10 years later you are in doing the work for the community. I think they will be proud, mix of emotion, then it gives them a will to live, which also then fosters agency, right? You kind of see success stories and then you see that they were in a rut just like you do. And that's kind of, I hope lah, to see if people are willing to do something about where they are. Because like you can't crisis forever. And if you don't try to get out of it, you won't know if it's if it will work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you never try to seek help, you never know if the help works for you. And then if you don't try this another form of help, if this one doesn't work, how would you know if that works or not? Something like that. So I think 10-year Angelina would be shocked but proud.
What do you think the vision for a Vox State will eventually become?
I mean, it's also another big dream, just like Videoto's big dream, but it's like hoping the building a world like a Vox State doesn't have to limit itself to Singapore, but its messaging is global because it's a global issue. So being able to build a world where youths have the agency themselves to support themselves in any way they can and make it such that mental health becomes more of a necessity to people instead of its current stigma and so on.
So you want like mental health providers to be like a human right rather than like a optional thing.
Like mental health support should be a basic need, and instead of something that's like, oh no, it's something that is a label, it should just be a basic need. Yeah, because it affects every part of your life, whether you recognize it or not. Like your health isn't just physical health, it's your mental health. It's in those days when you are procrastinating, maybe there's something up with your mental health, right? And like maybe you're not caring for it enough. Yeah, so maybe if you care about your mental health more, perhaps your procrastination will be less, or the paralysis you feel when you don't want to do work will be less as well.
So, what are the sort of advice you would give to somebody that's looking to start like it could be a mental health startup, it could be like a creative design startup. But if someone wants to start a startup, let's say they're in media arts and design school, they're year two right now, they're year one right now, they really want to start a startup, they want to change the world. What is the number one thing or the top few things you would tell them?
As from a third person perspective, entrepreneurship will seem very terrifying to enter, and you might do everything to avoid it. Like from what I understand, e-commerce, you do e-commerce for for like quite a bit of years prior to doing entrepreneurship, and maybe what was it scary for you to try starting, or the idea is always brewing in your head?
You have like two reasons you would enter entrepreneurship is that you're so overly optimistic that you don't know what's in front of you. You just go for it, which is I think what a lot of young entrepreneurs do nowadays. Or that you've calculated and know so much already that you know exactly what path to track. So I think for me it was the first one. I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what to start. I just went straight for it. And yeah, how about you?
I think both of the scenarios that you mentioned can happen to both can happen to young entrepreneurs, and it both have its cons. I think I was the second one because like I calculated everything. I wanted this vision, and Avoxy didn't start off as wanting to do mental health. In the mental health sector, more of we just wanted to give creatives a freedom of expression, and whether that's through a creative studio or whatever, that's the vision. But then calculating like, oh, how many people I would need, what would I do, what, da, 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 that would make a lot of like, at least for me, it make me feel like shit. There's too many things to start, and like if you don't start, how would you know? And I guess the biggest advice is start somewhere, right? You identify your problem, like you do your own research. You start by maybe just doing a business model canvas and just sit there and think about it. What would your business model kind of look like, and what value do why would people do your like buy or pay money for your products or service? Because ultimately, even as a social startup, you still have to survive. That's just the world we live in. And so what is how do you earn money at the end of the day? Whether it's 2 years down the line, then you start earning, or immediately you can earn revenue, that's completely fine. So I think one is just try, start watching just one video, one basic video on business model canvas or something like that, and just do it. Because as long as you start your gears moving and then you have some kind of inspiration, it will keep coming. Because you can, for entrepreneurship, you can never get it right the first time. You have to keep pivoting, and then you will face too many setbacks, and then you also lose momentum. Because I think a lot of young entrepreneurs, you run on momentum, you run on motivation, but then it's a bit like a relationship, honeymoon phase, and then you dip. That's exactly the same thing. You get your honeymoon phase, like, oh my god, I have this idea, da, 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 and it drops. Then at that point of time, how do you get over it is something that you only experience if you start. So start it first.
Do you think if you had a button to push and AI would completely stop its technological progress, will you push it?
I don't think the problem is in the AI. I think it's the humans that are using it.
Mm,
So my button is to stop the
people from
people. Yeah,
doing.
to I guess it's for them to understand, right? But then at the same time, we live in a society where capitalism, it makes like, or like the idea in Singapore is productivity is everything is fast, and that's because like you want things to output faster, and then the efficiency and whatever. Then that's why like all these AI tools are not given a second thought, because for me, I don't have to care about what the designer thinks as long as my thing works. And that's also a problem in advocacy, right? Like people are telling you like this is violating human rights, but it's not violating my human rights, so why do I have to care about you? Yeah, so that's one of the things also.
I have one burning question actually. If you never were to start a Voxtate, what will you be doing now? Or what will you be doing in future as well?
I mean, for me is I kind of risked um my career path or career opportunities doing a Vox state, because like right now I'm on a scholarship for while doing game design development, I'm studying game design development in Singapore Polytechnic, and I have a scholarship for that. And I chose to risk that, knowing that hey, that is like a stable route, right? If I go and tell people, hey, I'm a scholar, I do really well in my field, people would technically, in terms of career prospect, it seems like I would be well liked, or at least from what I understand. But then you see someone who's like completely new entrepreneur, you will pick the other person. But I still chose this route because it just meant more to me, or it's more fulfilling. And it's not that I'm never going back to that. Clearly, I'm gonna go towards that route still while doing university, like which is coming soon. And then yeah, so it's like if I didn't do that, I'll be doing games. But I think my life calling, or I don't know about calling, sounds a bit like your life purpose will change, but more of like at the current time, my motivation is to be able to impact some kind of community. And the community I chose for now is the mental health community, right? And if I wasn't doing that now, I would probably do one of my other startup ideas that appears at the back of my head, which one of them is in the gaming industry. So it's still me impacting the communities that I'm in. Yeah.
So after like let's say once you graduate from poly in about 3 months time, where would
Shit.
you
Damn.
yeah, where would you like go after that?
Uh, I'm going. I'm going uni. Hopefully overseas. I mean, as a kid, I wanted to go overseas uni for the longest time, so I'm applying for those. But SP has their like nomination to enter NUS through the NUS entrepreneurship pathway. So that's like something that's I guess I can look at, but I know my heart wants to be in the creative space first, then entrepreneurship. So that's things that I have to consider. So I guess as I graduate, I'm looking at uni, then obviously still doing AVOXTATE at my own time. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were to join any other course, what would it have been? If it wasn't MED, completely all the things that MED closed out to you.
I would be a forensic the the person that cuts up dead bodies and
Autopsy
like
kinda.
murder stuff.
Why though?
I like those things. Wow, that makes me sound kind of psychotic. Guys, I'm not psychotic. It's more of like I did like bio.
Uh-huh.
Uh the obviously bio came as a secondary and whatever. So when I did pick my choices for EE, I did put biomedical for SP. Purely because if creative work doesn't work out, I would do forensic work. Well, that's a very different career path to where I am now. Yeah, but it's okay.
I do see like some creativity in autopsies as well. Like there's like
Whoa.
the art.
Oh.
I don't know. It sounds a bit funny, but like
Whoa.
there's this art of like if you want to cut a human up, you
I
don't
guess
just
it's
like
the analytical part because you're trying to dissect something that you cannot get any more information of other than the thing itself.
yeah.
So I guess it's a puzzle. So I mean that's why out of every creative field I choose games. Right.
Like if your mind wasn't creative or you didn't like that creative part, right? You will probably become like a butcher or something. Like those like you know that's like cooking chicken rice, right? You just slam the knife on the thing. Like autopsy people at least have like you know a scalpel, right? Very
We
carefully.
are about to offend
We're about to offend like 20
we're
different
gonna
people.
offend the forensic. Y'all are doing a great job for
Very
giving
creative
closure.
people. Very well appreciated.
The cameraman is stunned right now.
That's crazy.
The cameraman is so stunned at the moment.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
But yes, if I were not doing the creative industry, I would be doing forensic work, which I don't know if I would have the brain cells to think like, hey, I should go business, I should do entrepreneurship. I don't know. But this is how my life is right now, and this is the route I've chosen. That's okay. I'm okay with it.
Alright,
Yeah.
that's fair.
So like just now I said trauma, right? Like in terms of like if let's say we were to have a podcast
Mm-hmm.
and I like a Voxy was to have a podcast and I invite you on, I would ask you about masculinity. Because men and their mental health and toxic masculinity
Completely
is
not in the
like it's not talked about enough. Yeah.
That's true.
I will start asking questions on that.
Alright.
Yeah.
I will prepare for that when you start your podcast.
can do now. Then I clip out. Then I put on a box.
So we're gonna start a new tradition here at the podcast. So we're gonna give you a question, and you're gonna create a question for the next guest on the podcast. So our question for you is, what's the greatest gift that another person has given you? Can be anything.
I think it's a bit ironic if I say this, but I was gonna say trauma as my answer. Like, okay, trauma is not a gift. Okay, guys, please don't get traumatized by anything. Hopefully, no one should have to go through trauma. But like, I think the trauma did shape me to how I am. It it influences literally to the core of like how I react to things, from relationships to situations to triggers to whatever. Like, it becomes the core, and so the gift is trauma, and trauma comes from the people that I've interacted with and lost and whatever. And that's the thing, right? It's a bad thing because your mental space has just been warped. But then without this mental space I have, would I even reach to where I am currently? Probably not. And the fact that you're able to not get over your trauma, but at least willing to like seal up the cracks within your headspace that was caused by the trauma is kind of like why um it matters, or rather like why it's the greatest gift, because it keeps your cogs like cogs in your head like moving, right? Like my brain constantly has something to think about, or like has something to reflect upon, because trauma gives you like, whether you forget because of your trauma or whether you have core memories from it, it I think as much as it hurt at the point of time, without it, I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I would and I needed to learn. Because for me, I live by like everything happens for a reason. And if those situations had to happen for me to grow to the person I am today, okay, fine. And trying to accept that, and the amount of shit that came because of and gave me trauma sucked. I'm going around in the same point, but the point is that the greatest gift is trauma because it got me to where I am, and then it gave me the importance that a lot of people go through this problem, that and trauma can't just go unresolved. But the problem is trauma is currently unresolved in a lot of people because access to mental health support isn't there. So I guess it kickstarted on my entrepreneurship journey. It also kind of shaped me to who I am today and how I treat people around me. And it's also the thing that made me waver why I'm alive, and the fact that I still choose to stay alive despite all the pain. It shows some kind of humanity and some kind of resilience. Yeah.
I see. It's like they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's like I know, I think, are you Christian?
No.
I think, I'm not sure if it's in the Bible or something, but something along the lines of like, if you ask God for strength, He'll only gives you situations that you can show your strength in, rather than just directly give you the strength itself. Because in life, you have to work for everything. And yeah, I really think that's a really good answer. Um,
I think also like if the same situation keeps happening to you, and this is something that I learned recently, then there's a lesson that you haven't learned yet. And you better go and figure out what that problem is, because the moment you learn that lesson, that pain won't come back again. Then you have something else to learn. Then you can move on in your life.
And this is quite like applicable in startups as well, right? Like when someone's trying to like acquire customers and you keep failing and failing and failing, something's really, really wrong. But for some founders, they just keep going at it and again relentlessly. So there's like that.
And I think that like especially founders who don't think their problem is in the product or in the customers. I mean, the customers are always there. Is how you make it such that they want to buy you, because like buy your product and not you force them to buy your product. Does it make sense? Like yes, a lot of like the lessons say like, oh, you need to create the value and whatever. You create the value by not changing your customers, you're changing yourself. So if you're constantly not getting customers, then what is your problem? Right. And then if you get over that, then you're slowly like, because I've seen this thing, or like as I watch like startup podcasts, they talk about this funnel, right? So if you're constantly stuck up here, then what is your problem here? So you just keep figure that out, and then your customers will go down and eventually be able to buy, and you'll get your customers then.
It's like the scientific method you learn in engineering where you like have to just keep going until you find the root of the problem.
That's
Like
just brute force.
yeah, it's like us at Videoto. Actually, we very early on we actually struggled to get customers. As good as the idea sounds, it was really difficult because at first we didn't know how to sell. So when we went up to customers directly, the strategy was just direct sales, right? And then people would be like, "Hey, what are you doing? I don't care about your product. You're like the 100 salesmen that have came to me, And we realized that we have to always like change our approach. And like once we start changing our approach to a certain way and they start getting more responsive, and then you unlock like a new stage. Oh, they now want to listen to you, and then now you're in the closing sales stage. Then you have to go test, test, test. And once that's done, you have to go to the after sales stage, then the product stage and all that kind of stuff. And yeah.
I mean, for the young entrepreneurs that are like viewing the podcast, the whole point of entrepreneurship is like I said, it doesn't stop at where you first start the product. You pivot because you test. So entrepreneurship is very important to test your product, and like I said, if you don't test, you'll never know what's wrong with that thing, and you never learn that lesson that keeps trying to tell you something. Yeah, so like what applies to life, yeah, it does apply to entrepreneurship. And like that lesson, or like that idea, or not just entrepreneurship but also how you manage people, because it's like if you and your team just constantly doesn't work out, then who is the problem? Or rather, what is the problem? Is the problem like if you try to solve everything, or like try to fix the team, or like, oh, we can try this method, maybe this is how we can function better, and then you keep doing and doing and doing, it doesn't work, then maybe look deeper and then try to solve that problem from there. So like there's a lot of, yeah, that idea can apply to a lot of things.
If you want to check Angelina out and AVOXTATE, we will link everything in the description below. So do make sure to check her out. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, you can follow AVOXTATE's Instagram at AVOXTATE. Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.